I hope that the previous few lectures have given you a good understanding of what the Helium platform is and what it can do. And it's now time to move on to the next step, and that is to create a very simple Hello World equivalent application for our Helium Atom gadget here. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I've already attached the Helium Atom with its adapter onto my Arduino Uno. I haven't got any sensors or other components on it. And all I'm going to do next is to get some random numbers taken from one of the Arduino's analog pins sent through the Helium network to a paste bin, so to a web service over the internet. I'm going to show you how to do that. Then after we do that, we're going to do something more sophisticated, more relevant to our purposes, which is to get real data from the two sensors on this prototyping board and send those over to my web application that is running on Heroku. So let's get started with this. Over to the Helium dashboard, which I showed you in the previous lecture, I've already got my Atom registered. So there's my Atom registered, and I've also got my element component registered as well. We're going to head over to the channels tab now, to this channels page. And one thing that I should mention is that the Helium dashboard gives you access to what's called an MQTT broker, which appears by default in your dashboard. Don't have to create it. As far as I remember, I didn't have to create this broker. And what this broker does is that it gives you a mechanism by which you can send MQTT formatted data from your Helium to the broker on the Helium dashboard, and then from there you can use any compatible MQTT client to subscribe to a topic and consume the data. Now, I'm not too fond or familiar with the MQTT protocol, and personally I much rather use web services simply formatted using JSON or CSV, that's comma delimited formats, in order to build my little web applications using IoT. But if you are familiar with MQTT, then this is something that you can consider doing. The dashboard gives you all the information that you need in order to grab the data from the Helium broker and consume it with your own client somewhere else, perhaps on the web. You can build custom applications, of course, that can do that, or you can use open source free MQTT clients for that purpose as well. Helium provides really good documentation that you can use in order to get started with MQTT if that is what you are interested to do. But in our case, for the purpose of this Hello program and demonstration, what we'll do is we'll get a random data from the Helium Atom and see the data appearing here in this request bin web application, which is a great way to learn about things such as HTTP requests and RESTful types of requests. We're going to get this information later to create our own application. So let's go back into the dashboard and go into the channels page. And to begin with, I'm going to create, you can see here it says create, I'm going to create a new HTTP channel, because we'll be using HTTP as a transport mechanism for our data. Now, there are two things that are needed. First is the method, and then any headers, and it's also going to ask for a name later on in step 3. But first, it wants us to choose a kind of method that we're going to use. Typically, we want to use either post or get method. Either one will work just fine for our purposes, but I have a preference for post methods when I want to send data to another application, especially if that involves creating new records in a database. That is a more appropriate way to use the post HTTP method. So I'm going to choose post here. For the endpoint now, I need a URL to which my web application will be listening for incoming requests from the Helium network. So to get the endpoint, I need to go to request bin, prove to request bin that I am not a robot by clicking on all the images that contain cars. Yes, I am a human. And then I will create a new request bin. Alright, so now the new request bin that I created gives me my random URL that I need. So I'm going to copy this URL. So copy the URL and go to the dashboard and paste it in the endpoint right there. I don't need to worry about any HTTP headers. I'm not doing any kind of authentication or authorization here. So I'm going to just leave this as it is, as blank. I'm going to give a name to my channel. I'm going to call it HTTP, Helium Test. That should do it. That will create the new channel, and you can see that in step 4 the dashboard gives you examples of code that you can use for your Arduino and Mbed device or a Raspberry Pi device. So I'm going to actually copy this. You can do either one of two ways. You can either copy this, and this is always going to be available to you even if you don't copy it right at this moment. You can either copy it, or you can just ignore it and just use the examples that come with the Helium library. You can see that there is just one inclusion here called Helium library. You can use that name in order to then go to your Arduino IDE and download and install the Helium library into your Arduino IDE.